Hey team, and welcome. I'm your host, Carrie, creator of Mother Life, your destination for all things real talk and parenting. This is the IRL group chat, where we talk about the wild balancing act of pursuing careers and passions while also doing our best to show up for our kids. Join me every week as I sit down with some badass parents in my closet and we talk about their careers, kids, and relationships and all of the weird shit that comes up when you're trying to balance the seemingly impossible. The more interviews I do with parents of older kids, the more commonalities I've started to see. These are not parents that talk passionately about sleep techniques or parenting styles or how they feed their kids. They talk in stories, in moments, in life philosophies. And that intuitively makes sense. As kids get older, the scenarios parents find themselves in will start to become more novel. And when life gets more complex, so too do the questions we ask ourselves and our kids. This week's guest had me reflecting on this on so many levels. The way you can be accepted by your own parents, even if their life experience looks entirely different to yours. The way you can show up for your own kids, even when they're totally different from each other. The way you can show your kids just how much you fucking love them, and that you can do that in a way that is all your own. I'm not even sure how to introduce this person because she's one of the most prolific comedic voice actors working today. To listen to this pod and hear about her upbringing is like listening to the history of Chicago improv itself. Iconic. Jill Talley has been a core presence on SpongeBob SquarePants since 1999 as the voice of Karen Plankton. She's been in Boondocks, American Dad, Mr. Show, and even, to her father's great pleasure, a couple episodes of Seinfeld. Just too many shows for me to even name. Jill is also the mother of two amazing grown kids and is married to the literal SpongeBob SquarePants himself, Tom Kenny. Talking to Jill made me feel the way a John Hughes movie around the holidays makes me feel. It feels cozy and safe and magic and filled with laughter. I hope it makes you feel the same. Enjoy.
Is this your closet?
Yeah, there's the identical one over there.
I want to trade houses.
Yeah.
I would love my own closet.
For the record, this is like the size of our bedroom when we lived in New York.
Yeah,
this
it's
one.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to start with like little Jill growing up, coming through the comedy scene, meeting on a show the person that would then become her husband, deciding to have a family, what that does to one's career. We're going to go through the whole thing. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
To prepare for this, I watched a montage of all of the Karen Plankton related content to being a mother. That was my main prep for this.
Okay.
And honestly, now I can't watch anything with either of you in it without just imagining the actual people.
I will say the first scene I did with Tom, the first scene on the show where I met him, we played a couple with a new baby.
That's
before
freaky.
we were a couple. So
talk about foreshadowing.
Yes.
Life imitating art much?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to start. You grew up in Chicago?
Yeah, grew up in the city.
Could not be more proud to be from Chicago.
I love Chicago. If you've known me for 2 minutes, if you talk to me for 2 minutes, I talk about Chicago in those 2 minutes. My dad was a firefighter.
Which, by the way, makes you like the coolest person in this house.
And yeah, Southside, Midway Airport girl, Clearing Ridge. Loved it. Public school. Loved my Chicago experience. Loved it.
And what was the parent dynamic growing up? Your dad's a firefighter, so clearly much beloved by the community because you kind of can't not be in that type of job.
I think it was, I'm going to say pre 9/11,
Yeah.
to be real. I feel like firefighters didn't, it was just a job. It wasn't like, I mean, I guess
wasn't
like
like,
little
"You're a
boys looked at
hero."
him like, my hero, but honestly, I don't think they got the love that they really should have gotten all along.
Yeah.
I feel like that's changed. But he also had like a construction business. All firefighters in Chicago anyway, and I don't know about everywhere else, but every firefighter that I knew, that my dad knew, had a side job because you could not make a living.
I don't know how
just as a
people still,
firefighter.
like today, I don't know how
Which
people
is crazy.
do it.
I just risked my life, so I should get paid pretty well. And there were 6 kids. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom, so can you imagine? So he had to go overnight at the firehouse, like, you're on, you're off, 2 days on, 2 days, a day off. I can't remember the exact thing, but he would be gone. So she had 6 kids, and 5 of us were born right on top of each other. Like,
is this like a Catholic thing? What is this?
I think so. So my brother's an Irish twin, but I have 3 older brothers and 2 younger sisters. So my brother was born, and then about 2 years later, maybe a little less, my next brother. So John was born, then Jim was born, then 2 years later, Jeff was born. 11 months later, Jill was born. 2 years later, Jana was born. And then there was a big gap. And then the change of life baby came, the unexpected. My sister was born. So she was born 6 years later than the rest of us. We were all born right on top of each other.
Wow.
Like, we literally passed each other in the hall at school and high school. And, you'd get a fake ID, go to a bar, and your brothers would be there. So it was different.
I love to like pontificate about birth order, like, oh, the youngest is like this, the oldest is like this. With 6, like, it blows the whole thing out of the water.
In my case, I'm the middle child. Tom is also a middle child. A lot of my friends are middle children. I don't know what it is about us, but I'm the first girl. So in a way, I kind of have the firstborn and the middle child thing happening, because I was the first girl. I was treated like the second coming. I have to be honest, I was spoiled. But I was the middle child, so I don't know. It's like you have a middle child mentality too.
But it's interesting also because you're also, like, at that point, the 3rd or the 4th?
I'm the 4th.
Yeah. So, like, you also kind of have to hang with it in a way that, like, has to make you a little bit more laid back about just going with the flow.
Yeah. You had no choice but to go with the flow in my house, because we had 1 car, which my dad took to work. So my mom had no car when he was at work, which meant in the winter in Chicago, if you had to go to the store, you had to walk through the snow. And if the snow, back then we got a lot of snow. Chicago doesn't anymore, but back then we got a lot of snow. And I remember us taking a sled. Like, my mom would pull a couple, like, kids, like the little ones on the sled, hold your little sister, and then the other kids would walk. We'd go to the store, we'd get our groceries. Then the groceries would go on the sled, like with one kid maybe holding them, and the other kids would walk, take turns pulling the sled. But like a pioneer person, basically.
Oh my God.
And then, we did walk to school, and it was
uphill both ways.
I just recently, when I went to, I always try to, if I fly someone out of Midway or drive someone to Midway, I always drive through my old neighborhood just to see it. And I drove to a friend of mine from my house to my elementary school, and they couldn't believe how far it was. And I couldn't believe how far it was.
Right.
Because we walked in kindergarten. Can you imagine my mom on the porch, bye? And she would tell my older brothers, look after your sister. And then the minute we got around the corner, they would run. They would run. They did not want to be saddled with a little kid. So you just kind of kept an eye on them, like, at a distance.
Jesus Christ. Well, it's funny because I feel like usually in childhood it's the other way around, when you go back to things when you're older and you're like, oh, that's so much smaller than I remember.
No. I guess it's not so much that, it's that I can't picture my kids or kids today walking that far. I don't know if I'd want my kids walking that far, but that's what we did.
And what was dinner time like? And with 6 kids, like, was everybody at the same table every night?
Yes, 6 p.m. My mom was a pushover and a really easygoing people pleaser type person, but when it came to that, it was like,
she didn't fuck around.
She did not. It was like 6 p.m. Your ass was in the chair. It wasn't I'm even in the bathroom. It was in the fucking chair, and no phone call. Like, we had one phone on the wall next to the kitchen, in the kitchen, with a long cord that you would stretch, like if a boy called or whatever. But if your friend dared to call during dinner hours, holy shit. My dad would just be like, and God forbid, like some boy that you had a crush on or something, my dad would be like, we're eating dinner, click, no, it was sacred. But 6 p.m. in the chair, and you ate what she made. And that was that. There was no questioning. It just was, that's the way it was. And I don't think it was ever like, this is the way it's going to be. It's just because that's all we knew.
Right.
We didn't fight it.
And also, like, logistically, so your mom's literally making dinner for 8 every night.
Yeah.
Most of us, the idea of doing that is like a special occasion.
Yeah. And she did it. Like, she made a vegetable. We didn't have like the money for junk food. I mean, back then I feel like junk food was more expensive than
it was
real
a treat.
Food. And now junk food is so cheap, unfortunately, it makes it so tempting for people who are struggling to eat that kind of food. But back then, I remember potato chips and stuff like that. That was a luxury we did not have. Like,
Right.
I would go, I had a friend who lived on the corner, and her dad was a bookie. I later found out he went to jail. But anyway, at the time, they had a lot of money. They had a lot of money because her dad was an illegal bookie. And they had junk food. And I would go over there to play, and her mom would give us there was unlimited. It was Oreos and chips. I think some of our friendship was based on that.
Tale as old as time. There's always one house that's got like the good shit, even till today, and your kids for sure. Like, I remember, Hadar, if you're listening, your house was that house. Like, all the treats, all the good shit.
If you want to be the mom who keeps an eye on your teenager and knows what's going on, you have treats in your house. And I went as far as to get treats that my kid didn't even like, but his friends liked, and put them in the pantry and say, when you guys come over, help yourself. That was a thing in our house.
Ding, ding.
As a matter of fact, Daniel and Jonah, who are my son's really good friends who lived 3 doors down, when my mother-in-law was staying with us, they were over, and one of the boys walked over and went into the pantry because I told them to. I said, I have snacks for you, and I got something you liked, and it's in the pantry. So help yourself. So one of them went over and opened the pantry, and my mother-in-law yelled at him, and, what are you doing going in there? And I said, it's okay.
It's how it works here.
I told them to. I want them to.
So growing up, you've got chaos. There's just 6 kids. Yeah. And mom is making dinner for everybody. When you say she was a stay-at-home mom, she was a professional stay-at-home. Like, this was her truly full-time.
And she did, like, before my brothers were old enough to do it, or I was old enough to do it, she shoveled the snow. Like, she'd have to shovel the snow, like, out in front, on your steps or whatever. She would get up and do that. And she would cut the grass. Like, as soon as my brothers got old enough to do it, or I was there, we would do it.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, my mom would do it.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter. Like, if you were pregnant, it didn't matter. It was just how it was.
Shit had to get done.
She did the laundry. She cooked homemade meals. I don't know how that woman did it. I literally don't know. She died at 59. Maybe that's why. The stress. Yeah, right.
So this whole childhood growing up, you're living in, this environment with a ton of kids around. At what point are you like, I'm the funny one?
Everyone in my family's funny. And I think you hear that
often
from comedians. Like, a lot of times you're not the funniest one in your family. I have a brother who's really, really funny, really cutting. They're all funny. I mean, we're still in connection every day on Wordle. We do Wordle every day as a family still. And we will put each other down and make jokes and stuff like that through that every day. But yeah, my brother Jim was like the guy who had the really, really quick wit and would say things that were very cutting, but very funny. Like, I remember us saving for a pair of Doc Marten boots. And I just told him this when I saw him at this wedding, because it came back to me and we were laughing so hard. I saved my money and bought these Doc Marten boots, and I was so proud of them. And I walked in the house with these boots on, and my brother was sitting on the couch, and he goes, oh, you got a phone call while you were out. And I said, I did? And he goes, yeah, Frankenstein called. He wants his boots back. Savage. But I laughed really hard because it was funny, and that's how our relationship was in our house. Like, we would put each other down, but we would do it in a funny way, I think. So it kind of helped you not only get a thick skin, but just think just practice.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
But are you the only one who decided to pursue this funniness professionally?
Yes.
So how did you differentiate? How did you decide, like, this is more than just like dinner time banter?
I don't know. I mean, I was a big, like everyone my age, I was really big into Carol Burnett. I was really big into early SNL, Gilda Radner, that kind of stuff. And I would go to school and do impressions of what I saw on SNL or, whatever.
Like
Carol
at lunchtime?
Burnett. Yeah, at lunchtime. I would do impressions of people's mothers, like in the neighborhood. Prank calling was really big when I was young. That was like, that was practice for character work, for real. Like, you could try calling the school and get kids out of stuff as their mothers. You could, there was all kinds of stuff. Just prank calling people all the time. And so I did a lot of that with my friends, and I made them laugh. And so, it just, you're like, hey, I kind of like this. It's fun. I enjoy it. And that's just kind of how it started. And so when it came time to go to college, And I was always a very average student. I'm going to put that right out there. Very average ADD kid. So, but my parents, one thing I love about them is that they never tried to push us in any direction. They were very accepting of who you were. And neither one of my parents went to college. So I don't think they pushed for college, but they were thrilled when my brothers and my sister went to college. Like, they were overjoyed. But they didn't make me feel bad that I didn't make that choice. And so I just said, I'm just going to get a job and I'm going to take classes and doing what I want. So that's what I did. I got it. You know, back then in high school, you had to take secretarial classes. And I really resented it at the time. I thought it was sexist. Like, why do you offer the girls these classes and you offer the boys wood shop?
Yeah.
It just pissed me off. But anyway, those secretarial classes came in handy because I was a super fast typist and did shorthand and all that crap. So those secretarial classes really helped me. And I went after high school and I got a job full-time at an accounting firm. I got an apartment. By 18, I was living in an apartment, working full-time and taking improv classes at night and on the weekends and living this great life and meeting all these really funny people. And so that's kind of how I started. I just started doing that. And then...
Wait. We have to pause here. So your parents are... You are choosing this path at this point already that is really different from anything that would have known previously. Like... I can't imagine they knew loads of people trying to break into comedy.
Nobody. I knew nobody in my neighborhood who did this kind of thing. Absolutely nobody.
But it sounds like for them, it's like they were happy for you as long as you were working hard and being independent.
Yeah.
Like, do you think they would have given you shit if you were like, I'm going to live at home and try and scrap it together? Or would they have been fine with that too?
They might have been fine with it too. I mean, I remember... You know, I think my dad wanted me to live closer to home, so he was always trying to get me to get a job at Midway Airport.
Cute.
He's like, you gotta get a job at Midway. They're hiring. And I'm like, oh, I like being downtown, you know. My mom made Sunday dinners, and all of us came home for Sunday dinner whenever we could. And if I missed a Sunday dinner, that's how close my family was. If I missed a Sunday dinner and I came home in 2 weeks, like when I was putting up a show at Second City or something, if I came home, you know, missed a Sunday and I walked in the door, my dad would have his little saying where he would say, Joan, call the police, there's a stranger in the house. So you know, because they were spoiled because they did get to see us every weekend. My family's super tight, and all of our friends that we hung out with would come over as well. And my mom was very much open door, like, bring your friends. So I had this great solid base that I could go to. And believe me, I did. There were times where I was auditioning for stuff and I didn't get it and I felt really sad, and I would just go home. I would just hop on a bus and go home, and my mom would make me a dinner, and she was thrilled that I was there. Sleep in the guest room. She had a guest room finally because we all moved out. And so, but anyway, yeah, that's what I did. I took improv classes and met funny people. I met like Robert Smigel, and like early on when I was young, I met, you know, Conan O'Brien, Robert Smigel, my friend Dave Reynolds, who's really, really funny. And we had an improv group. We did a show in Chicago. It did really well. It actually had a run for a while, and we made money. We made union, you know, equity money. And I would only work part-time. Like, I would do temp jobs. Like, if ever I needed money, I would just do a temp job. I could pick up a phone and walk into a place and just type, you know, 130 words a minute, whatever.
Have you ever wondered, wow, I would love for this podcaster to sell me something already? Well, you're in luck. Today I'm selling you on something highly exclusive, highly niche, highly mother. Just kidding, we're in the early stages over here, but if you've got a company or a cause you'd like to promote on the pod, get in touch. We're a good time. You were you were in Chicago at this golden era of improv, like at the kind of beginning or, you know, early stages of this thing that now when we talk about comedy, when we talk about improv, which has become so popular everywhere else since, it all sort of comes back to Chicago in that time.
So I went to Second City when I was in high school, and that was the moment where I went with friends and I said, I'm going to work here. That was it. That I didn't have any goal besides that. I didn't think anything beyond that because that's my nature. I'm going to work here, and that's where it stops, and we'll take it from there. But so that was all what I was leading up to. I took improv. They have a place called Players Workshop of Second City where you can take classes, and most of the people who are at Players Workshop are people who also wanted to be at Second City one day. So we all met each other and became friends. That was the other great thing about that era is you could find a theater, put up a show, people would come. Yeah.
Okay, so then at what point do we move out of the sort of Second City world into acting?
So I auditioned for Second City while I had an office job that I loved for a production company. And I was doing really well at this production company, and they liked me and I liked them. And I was very happy. And I started thinking, this is what I'm going to do for my life. I'll work for this company. And I would have been happy doing it, to be honest, because it was a creative company with creative people. But then Second City was holding auditions. So I went on my lunch and I told my boss, I'm going to take a long lunch. I didn't tell him what I was doing. And I went and I auditioned. And then they kept holding over people. Like they would release people and keep people. Like you, goodbye. You, stay. And it got down to me and Tim Meadows and Chris Farley was there. And wait, was Chris at that audition or did he come later? I don't think Chris was there. But Tim Meadows was there. And Greg Holloman was there. Jane Lynch was there. So there was like a group of us that all got hired. And the ones who auditioned together, and we all got hired at the same time, which was really nice. But I didn't go back to work that day. They kept holding me, and I kept going to a payphone because back then we didn't have cell phones, and I would go to a payphone and call my boss and go, just gonna be a little bit longer, and then finally I was like, called him up and went, don't think I'm gonna make it back today. And then they told me that day I was hired and that I would be reporting right away to learn all these scenes because we were going to be going on the road within 2 weeks. And so I had to tell my boss, like, I'm sorry, I'm going to take a big pay cut and go do this dream of mine. And my boss loved me so much and I loved him so much. And he gave me, as a present, he gave me this big Delsey?
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Delsey luggage. This giant set, like, high end but enormous.
That's so sweet.
And he gave me
like a duffel bag, basically.
Yeah. And he gave me a Filofax, a leather, one of those. And this is when Filofax was the shit, and it was just out, and it was expensive, Nordstrom, kind of gift. Beautiful leather Filofax, which I still have. As a matter of fact, it looks like Indiana Jones's notebook. It's all beat
amazing.
But anyway, he gave me this big luggage set. So my touring company, when we left 2 weeks later and we met in front of Second City with this van, and I roll up with the first rolling suitcase ever invented, but it was like this giant thing. And the tour manager goes, what the fuck is that? And I was like, that's my luggage. And he said, no, you can't. Do you see this van? Do you see how many people? And I said, I didn't know. And he said, yeah, not again, ever again. Never again bring that suitcase here. So that was then I had to go buy like a small duffel bag like you said, but yeah.
Amazing. And so was that experience like what you were hoping it would be, and kind of what was the momentum after that?
It was great. So I worked in the touring company, and when you work at Second City, you live at Second City. Your whole world is Second City. So I was in a van with a group of people. One of them became my first husband. You're hanging out all the time. And then I finished touring, and then I worked at Second City ETC, which is like a really cool little space behind Second City in the building that was started by Jane Morris and Jeff Michalski, and it's more experimental and really cool. You have a lot more freedom there. And did that, and then I went on to the main stage. And I worked with all the same people, like Tim Meadows, Chris Farley, Jane Lynch, like all my little group, David Pasquesi, our little group. Steve Carrell was in my main stage show. And it was awesome. It was really, really, really great. And then while I worked at Second City on the main stage, I was asked to audition for a show that was a comedy sketch show in LA. You put yourself on tape. I did that. They said, we're going to fly you out. And they flew me and Carrell out. And there were two shows I was auditioning for. One was called Main Street USA and one was called The Edge. And I think Steve was auditioning just for Main Street. Anyway, we had to do our improv set and get on a red eye, or do our show, go to the airport, get on a red eye and fly to LA. And we helped each other with on the plane, like, what are you going to do? Which character? Kind of helped each other out. And then the next day, we had the auditions. During the night that night, I had to go to the ER. I don't know if I had like a kidney stone or something, but
Jesus Christ.
I woke up in the worst pain of my life. And I told Steve, something's really bad. I got to go to the hospital. And he's like, I'll go with you. This is, so he was very sweet. Went to the hospital. They gave me some kind of painkiller. And I said, well, I have this audition in the morning and I got to be alert for it. And I don't want to do it if I'll just not take the pain meds. I don't want to be loopy or anything. And they said, no, it's not going to do anything to you. It'll help with
Some
pain.
barbiturate.
Right. So they gave me this pain medicine. And I'm a person, like, I don't even take aspirin and stuff. So anyway, I take this pain medicine, go back home. I hardly got any sleep. I'm sure Steve hardly got any sleep. The next day we both have our auditions. I am higher than a kite. Like, I literally remember there was a couch in the waiting room and all these nervous actresses waiting to audition for this show. And I laid down on the couch and fell asleep. And they had to come out and wake me up to go into the room to do the audition. And I was like, yeah, I looked so cool. I looked like, yeah, what? Oh, it's an audition, no biggie. And I went in and I wasn't nervous, I think, because of this, being under the
PSA,
influence.
drugs are great.
Drugs are great, folks. Do them. Anyway, so I went in and I got that show, and then I went to network. This is network. This is huge. These are like the thing everyone is so stressed about. So I go to the one network show, and then later that day to the other network show. I get both shows in one day. I get 2 TV shows.
How old are you, ballpark, around this time?
20... Hold on. This is so sad. I left Second City in 92. I was 30. Okay,
great.
So, right. So, anyway, Steve didn't get the show. And I remember flying back. And he was fine. He wasn't like... He was doing little bits of things in Chicago, movie parts and stuff like that. So I don't think he was like super broken up. But I felt bad. I felt like, here I got 2 shows and he didn't get one.
Yeah.
And
he didn't even get any drugs from the hospital.
I know. And I kind of felt like, I hope something good happens for him. He's a funny guy. I hope something happens for him. Anyway, so I came back out to do The Edge. And on The Edge, that's where I met Tom. So
tell me about that. The meeting of Tom.
Well, he's very different from me because when I came out to LA, the LA riots happened. So I was doing The Edge. It was April, I guess, of 92, something like that. And we were all on the lot at Radford, which is stone's throw from here. And the LA riots broke out. And so we were taping, and I didn't know Tom. Jenifer Aniston was on the show. Wayne Knight was on the show. We're all meeting each other for the first time. We're total strangers. And they say, everybody go back to your hotel. There's these riots happening. There's a curfew, and I'm a rule follower. I am a rule follower. So I'm like, we must get back right now and follow the rules. So I go back to my hotel and the phone rings and it's Tom. And he says, it's Tom from the show. I'm trying to get the cast together to go see a friend of mine is playing music at this place in the Valley. And I said, there's a curfew. And he said, oh, I know, but that doesn't matter. And I was like, not having it. I was like, that is not okay. You cannot go out when there's a curfew. And he's like, everyone's going. The whole cast is going. So then I didn't want to be left out. So I went. And I remember,
you're like having hives everywhere.
I was so nervous and uncomfortable the whole time. Like, this is wrong. But Jenifer Aniston went. We all went. And we went to this little bar. And we saw our friend Dave Stuckey, who is now one of our good friends. Like, who knew? Like, years later. So anyway, we did this pilot and then went back to our lives.
Wait, excuse me. No, we need to get to the part where you fell in love with your husband. Or did you not fall in love with him in that moment? Like, did it take a while? Were you friends for a while?
We did the pilot, and I mean, I thought he was funny. I thought everyone was nice and funny, and went back to my life. And then, which my life at that time was, things were happening.
Wait, were you married still at this time?
Yeah.
Okay,
so
that's the things are happening.
Yeah, yes. It was not good.
Your starter marriage.
My starter marriage, who was an alcoholic, and so there was some things. So, anyway.
But you learned through that experience what you did not want to repeat the next time.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, my brother died. That's the other thing that sucked. So I come back out to do the show. We get picked up. We come back out in August. I think it was August of that year to do the show. And my brother died, who is my Irish twin, who's only 11 months older than me. So he died of a drug overdose, which is really sad. Christ. And we were very close. And so it shook my world up. Like it just made me, I think what it did was it was a kind of a combination of things happening in my life at that time. Like one, hey, a person my age died. Even though he died of a drug overdose, it still makes you think,
you're not immortal.
I'm not going to live forever. And
yeah.
I'm super unhappy and things aren't good. And I was already separated from my ex-husband. And I was like, I don't think I want to make this work because it's a lot of work. I don't want to go into it because
But
he has passed away since. So out of
right. Respect for the past. Yes.
I don't want to shit on him too much or talk about him too much.
But we can view it as an educational experience.
Educational experience. And I think the other thing was being away from Chicago and living. I wasn't living on my own. I was staying with a friend of mine whose husband was in Chicago. So we kind of traded places, and I got to be out here working, and I was like, I'm so much happier when I'm here by myself in LA than I am in Chicago.
Yeah.
And that's pretty telling.
Yeah.
And then this thing with my brother. So when my brother died, I went to therapy for the first time in my life. I'd never been to therapy. I was kind of old school.
It wasn't fashionable yet.
Yeah, and I was kind of old school, like, therapy? A head shrinker? What's wrong with you? You know, so anyway, but I went to therapy, and it was kind of like really beneficial because I remember this therapist, and I just kind of got on the subject of my marriage and stuff, and she's like, you're really not happy? And I said, no, but, you know, no one in my family has ever gotten divorced.
Right.
So I can't. And it's till death do you part, and I'm Catholic. And I was like,
the rule follower.
This is it. I'm the rule follower.
Yeah,
this is it.
Those are the rules.
What am I going to do? And the therapist was like, you don't have to stay in this marriage. And I was like, oh, man, it would kill my mom. She's super Catholic. My mom was super Catholic.
Yeah.
So she's like, why are you worrying about your mom? And that's like that people pleaser thing.
Very familiar.
So
with that.
Anyway, that happened, and I got divorced. And then.
But was your mom fine?
My mom was so great. My mom
I fucking knew it. I could tell from this woman.
My mom said the thing that I'll never forget. She said to me, I've known you your whole life, and I've never seen you lonelier than the time you were married. So I think that she knew all along. So, you know,
she was waiting for you to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, we got picked. We did our show, and then we took a break, and then they brought our show back. And when they brought our show back, I officially moved to LA, and that's when Tom and I started dating. And
was your mom happy for you to, because like she's at this point so used to you being around both of your parents, like you're around all the time. Were they just happy for you to go and explore, or do you think they were like, our baby's leaving us?
No, they came out to LA. They loved it. They came on the set. They were really proud. My dad was really funny. They came out, and we recorded across from Seinfeld. And our show was just this little show on Fox, which was a new network at the time, not even on 5 days a week. And there's Jerry Seinfeld across the way. And my dad goes, you know what you ought to do? You ought to go across the street there and apply for Seinfeld. That's the show you should apply for.
Thanks, Dad.
Apply for that.
Apply for that.
And then I got them tickets because my dad liked the show. I got my parents tickets to see it. And he was in the audience. You know how they have the warm-up comedians?
Yeah.
The warm-up comedian was talking to my parents, and apparently before the show even started taping, he said to my dad, and what are you here for? You know, you're here, you know, you're in town, you're here for this. And my dad goes, well, I'm here to see Steinfeld. So the stand-up comedian proceeded to call Jerry Seinfeld Steinfeld.
Amazing.
The whole time. So, oh my God.
He needed to be humbled,
yeah,
I'm sure.
Exactly.
I'm sure.
Knock down a few pegs.
Yeah. So you guys start dating, and you are very different people. Rule follower, not rule follower.
I think Tom's a rule follower. I mean, we both like came up in comedy at a time when drugs were like rampant. Like, you know, I was around Farley and all those guys.
Right.
I don't even smoke pot. I mean, I'm super clean cut. And Tom, same. And Tom was doing stand-up. He came from the world of stand-up. I came from the world of improv. And he was like, he had club owners try to pay him with cocaine. Like,
wait a minute. So I have to pause. I am shocked to hear this about your husband because there is no bigger acid trip than SpongeBob SquarePants.
I know, right?
I am actually floored right now because that entire show is just like an incredible, I mean, again, from another teetotal person, I mean, besides pot, like no idea. To me, that looks like I feel like I am taking drugs when I watch it.
And Steve Hillenberg, the creator, you know, who sadly passed away, and loved that man so much. He was like clean cut, you know what I mean? Surfer, but you know, like so this cool, clean cut, sweet guy. But who loved
people are going to be really, I feel, disappointed to hear that in the drug community.
Sorry, yeah, but so we were very similar in a lot of ways. Like we were both people that. He had 5 kids in his family, Irish Catholic. I had 6, you know, Midwestern kind of values. Both came from towns. Like Tom came from Syracuse, New York, and nobody he knew was doing this, really. Oh, no, I shouldn't say that. He had Bobcat Goldthwait. And him and Bob became friends in elementary school, and they kind of came up together. And then Bob left Syracuse. He got into movies and stuff, and Tom went with him and was a roommate of his and did stand up. So that's kind of how his path happened. But anyway, so
you're dating, you're on the show together. At what point do you say, you know what, this person is so different, I'm ready to start another chapter and maybe get married? Like, had you considered getting married again?
I don't even think I was thinking about marriage, really, to be honest. I just really liked hanging out with him. We had a lot of fun. And then we didn't get engaged till Mr. Show. So we didn't really, I'm trying to think, I don't think we even started dating till the Edge was over with. And then, when did we start Mr. See, this is the problem with me. I'm so bad with dates. We started doing Mr. Show, and we got engaged while on Mr. Show. So, yeah, we got engaged in 95. My mom died in January of 95 from breast cancer at 59. Tom and I got engaged in the middle of 95, and then my dad died in December of 95. So I had this really horrible, probably the most horrible year of my life, bookended. Horrific things. And then in the middle, this really great thing. So we got married in 96, and I took all the money that my dad left for the 6 kids to split, his firefighter wealth. And it was more than it should have been because my parents didn't spend any money on themselves. But anyway, so we took that money and we used it for our wedding, and we decided we would fly out any family member who couldn't afford it. We would rent a bus. We'd take people to the LA Zoo. We'd try to get tickets for Disneyland. We took all these rooms over in this motel in LA. It was a really sweet wedding. So I think making a positive thing out of a
horrific year.
Exactly.
Truly.
And then we went on to work together a lot. Like we did the Smashing Pumpkins Tonight video.
And can you tell people what, if they don't remember that video, what were you guys in that video?
We were
what
the couple that flies out of the Zeppelin and fights the Martians and everything. And
it was your honeymoon, right? Isn't that like part of the storyline of the video? It's like your honeymoon on the moon.
So Jonathan Dayton and Valerie Ferris came in as directors on Mr. Show, I think on the last season. And that's how they knew us. And they called us up and said, do you want to do this video? And we were like, hell yeah, that's great. So we did the video. We shot, I think, for 2 days. That was really fun. And, Billy Corgan's a Chicago guy. That was cool. So we continued to work together. We did Mr. Show. We did that. And then...
Wait. Sorry. We have to pause for a second because I'm remembering you were in a couple of episodes of Steinfeld.
I was.
And your dad was around still for that?
My dad saw me in Steinfeld, yeah.
Then, perfect. Yeah. You said Dad wants this.
Yeah, exactly.
Incredible.
Yeah. So we did that, and we worked on that, and then we both did voiceover stuff, and then we ended up, I think part of the thing is like when one of us gets a job on something and they do okay, then you become friends with the directors and the producers. Sure. You go to their house for a barbecue, and then they're like, you do voiceover, we got to have you in on the show. Then you get an audition, then you might end up on the show. So that's kind of like how it worked for Tom and I. So,
and did either of you sort of seek out that voiceover track, or did it kind of find you?
I did more voiceover work than Tom in the beginning, but I did like kind of straight commercials in Chicago. There was a big market in Chicago for advertising, so they did a lot of commercials out of Chicago, like Leo Burnett and stuff. So I did that, and Tom did stand-up, and in his stand-up act he did a lot of funny voices. And somebody came to one of his shows and said, oh, I'm casting a cartoon for Nickelodeon, and I think it was Rocko's Modern Life, and he went in and he got it.
Rocko's Modern Life.
So he was Heifer the Cow, and then it just progressed from there. Once he had a foot in the door, he would get called for auditions and he would land stuff. And then I auditioned for a part on Rocko and I got it. And so we both kind of came into animation kind of around the same time. So we've been linked like career-wise, and I think people think of us as, they cast us as a couple. Like
Tom and Jill.
There was a show that we did called Big News, a pilot that was really, really, really funny. It never went. I was so heartbroken. But where they hired us to play an anchor team. And we had more fun doing this. I was heartbroken it didn't get picked up. It had a really funny cast. And It had David Cross and Mary Lynn Ricecup and Kathy Griffin. And oh my God, there just was a huge, I think Sarah Silverman might have been in it. But anyway, it was a really fun show. It didn't get picked up. But we got to play anchor people, which we had more fun just kind of mocking anchor people. So, but yeah, so we.
I mean, one of my favorite movies of all time is Anchorman.
Yeah, fantastic.
Great piece in the canon.
Yeah, exactly.
At what point in this journey do you guys decide to start a family, or is it a decision, or does it sort of happen?
Yeah, I mean, we started living together. We got engaged on Mr. Show, and I was older. You know what I mean? This is my second marriage. I was older, and you know, I talked to my gynecologist when I was just at my regular physical, and I said, I'm thinking about having a kid. We're getting married. It's gonna be great. You know, he's like, Jill, at your age, and you know, you hear that term geriatric pregnancy.
I know.
Amy Schumer just did on her show. That
funny.
made me laugh so hard because it's so true, that whole geriatric pregnancy. You feel terrible when they say those words. So my doctor said, you have to try right away. You cannot wait. You might even be too late. I mean, he was like doom and gloom. So I got pregnant right away. And then I was mad at the doctor because I was like, see, I probably could have waited. Anyway, so I had Mac while I was still working on Mr. Show. And he kind of grew up like as a toddler on that set, you know. I just came across a photo of Polaroid, and on the back of it's Mac as a toddler with lipstick kiss marks all over his face. And on the back it says, Mac was kissed by all the women of Mr. Show.
Oh, sweet.
And he just got passed around, you know, like Sarah Silverman, Karen Kilgariff, you know, everyone just kissed him.
Cute.
And, you know. So yeah, I had a Manny. My friend's husband was our nanny.
Amazing.
Manny.
Very
from
progressive.
Australia. Brad. And he would bring him to the set. And so, you know, because when I nursed him and stuff like that. And then finally he was in preschool or whatever. But yeah.
Well, for you grew up in such a specific kind of house with this like really present mom, dinners on the table every night. She's doing everything for everybody. Did you have any expectations about like the kind of parent you wanted to be?
I had a lot of guilt about even having a babysitter, to be honest. And I was like the kind of person, and I look back on it now and I go, you were stupid. Because I would get home from work and I would tell, you know, whoever was taking care of the kids at that time, we had a couple different people. I would be like, you can go, instead of going, I'm going to need a minute. Like, I didn't do that. You know, I didn't take time for myself very much because I felt guilty. Like, I thought my time for myself was my job. Like, I'm working, I'm out of the house, so that's my me time.
I can relate to that.
And instead of like, well, no, I should have me time.
Also,
like downtime. There was no downtime. It was working at my job or working with the kids. There was no downtime. So I was pretty exhausted.
And in your partnership, do you feel like, because I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this with my own partnership, I don't think my husband feels that same imperative. Like he's like, no, I'm going to go take me time.
Yeah, I don't.
In a way that like he doesn't have any guilt or shame about it whatsoever.
Tom
whereas
had
when I do it, I feel
built
bad.
into his day back then, because at that time you would go from studio to studio. You didn't come home. You didn't work from home. So he would go to Cartoon Network in the morning for a session that might record from like 9 to 11, and then maybe at 1 he would have Nickelodeon, which was 3 blocks away. So rather than come back home, it didn't make sense for him.
He'd
to
have
come
a
back
lunch.
Home. He might go to lunch with the animators or whatever. So that built in a little bit of downtime. There was just little breaks while he was on. Even getting in the car and driving to a job is me time back then. You know, I mean, I loved driving. Yeah, right. If I ever got a job that was like on the Fox lot, you know, people would bitch about traffic, but I'd be like, that's an extra hour.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah. So, yeah, that was really hard. I mean, and also with Mac, I had postpartum. I did not really have it with Nora, but with Mac, because that was when my whole world shifted. I was a working woman. I did what I want, when I wanted. And then Tom and I were both working on the same TV show, and it didn't change for him really as much as it did for me. Like, I was nursing. That's a whole different avenue. Like, you must stop what you're doing. You must, you know, So I remember
you really had a direct comparison because your exact partner who also has the same children is having a very different experience.
Yeah, and Tom was really, really helpful. He's like the guy who does dishes and he changes diapers. I mean, really, really helpful. But he didn't have the body, like his body was the same.
Right.
I mean, and thank God, like Bob Odenkirk and he was like in one of my first improv groups and we're really dear friends. And when I told him on Mr. Show that I was pregnant, and I was so sad because I thought I was not sad that I was pregnant, but sad that I couldn't have these two wonderful things simultaneously, that I had to leave the show. So I went in to announce to him that I was pregnant and I was going to have to leave the show. And he was like, why? And I said, well, because I'm pregnant. I'm going to, how can you do all these characters when you're a pregnant person? And Bob said, Jill, we'll work around it. We'll find a way. This is great news. I'm happy for you. He couldn't have been more supportive.
What a guy.
And then I didn't just get pregnant in my stomach. I got pregnant in my whole body. I gained 60 pounds when I was pregnant with Mac, and I looked like an Oompa Loompa. And I went back to Bob and David and said, I appreciate that you're trying to keep me on the show, but it's not working right now because I'm so big that how can I play the girlfriend? I look like a pregnant woman. You can't hide it at some point. Right. So for the sake of the comedy and the scenes, it didn't make sense for me to stay, but they were very, very sweet to me. They were trying to write characters in that were pregnant. Like,
almost makes it worse because it's like, it's like, oh man, like this just can't be helped.
Yeah, exactly. And so I stopped working. I missed like half a season, probably the third season. Then I came back after Mac was born for the fourth season. But I remember like just being like, why everything's so different for me? You know what I mean? I can't wear the same clothes. I can't, and I took Mac everywhere. I took Mac with me for voiceover auditions in his little carrier, and people would babysit him in the lobbies of voiceover. I handed my kid off to everybody. But Mac was a really easy kid.
He's a friendly guy.
That's why. Yeah. And he was so easy to take places. So I was very lucky with that, And I don't know which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Was he like that because I dragged him around all the time? Or would he have been like that either way? I don't know.
I think it's probably a mix, right? Like a different kid that could have manifested in a lot of anxiety or, whatever. Like it's probably got to be a mix of both, right?
Yeah. I think that is the one thing about having two kids is like, if I could go back in time, if I could do one thing differently.
You'd have 6 kids.
Yes. Never. I would tie my tubes after that. If I could go back in time, I think I wouldn't expect, or I would at least try not to expect, my second kid to be my first kid.
Yeah.
Because my kids are so polar opposite.
Yeah.
And Mac just went along with stuff and yes. And then Nora comes out and she says the word no just flows off her tongue so easily. And I think because I was stuck in this way of parenting the first kid, that I didn't appreciate her independence. I saw it as defiance, and she was independent,
right?
And it was really a good thing. It was hard to parent. It's hard to parent a kid who's independent because it's more convenient if your kid just does what you say than a kid who's independent. But now I'm so grateful because she's so cool and independent, and I see the positive aspects of that. But when she was young, I think it was
frustrating.
It was so frustrating.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh my, why can't she just say yes? Why can't you just do what I want? Why doesn't she, I think I did compare her to Mac. Like he was so easy and she's so hard. Instead of going, she's so independent and he's a rule follower.
Right.
Me. And both of those things have positives and negatives. And you know what I mean? It's just like,
I just feel like those tools to parent, like we're trying to do them now and it's like exhausting parents in a crazy way, but like that each kid needs to be kind of parented differently.
Yeah.
That whole concept is super new.
It's like you have to go back to school again, Mac would get out of bed and he would sit up in his toddler bed down the hall and go, I'm awake. Can you come and get me? Can I get out of bed? Anyway, I would lay his clothes out in the shape of a person. He would get up. He would put them on. He would come to the table. That's what it was like getting him to preschool.
Absurd.
And
never met her. Don't know that situation.
Exactly. So he did it so effortlessly and so easily. Now, Nora, from the minute she could talk, wanted to pick out her own clothes, wanted to tie her own shoes. She wanted to dress herself at 2, and it was inconvenient for me because I'm in a hurry to go pick my other kid up.
Right, and you don't have the time to just like let her.
And to celebrate this,
Yeah.
like, how cool is this that you have opinions and you want to do this? Like, I only think I saw it as, oh my gosh, why can't she just let me, why can't I lay her clothes out? Why can't I put her clothes on her? It's faster. And I regret that. If I have one thing that I could go back and do, I think I would try to see what was happening, that this human being was forming into this really cool, independent person instead of looking at him as oppositional.
Which is funny because now you are so in love with your children and you are so proud of your children and you really do celebrate who they are now that they're older, that it's just so, because I can't imagine that chapter of your life because I only see you now.
I celebrated her. She was really funny. The thing with Nora, she's always been really creative and really funny, and that was just such a joy to be around. But I think she was spunky. And I also think, not just me, I think society rewards the kids
who are
that
easy.
Are people pleasers.
Yeah, 100%.
Like when you go to school and you have your carpet square and you're supposed to sit on your carpet square, those kids who do that are rewarded. They're teachers' pets. They're everybody's favorite.
Yeah.
You go to a grocery store with the kid who's well behaved and sits in the cart and doesn't, and they
people
get an
say,
extra lollipop
yeah.
or stickers and whatever. If you have a kid who questions things, why do I have to do this? What's the meaning of this? Like, and it's so intelligent and it's so, like, I look back on it now and I go, she's curious. She's wanting to understand, what are these boundaries there for? My safety?
Do you ever
controlling?
Do you ever talk to either of your kids about any of this stuff now that they're older?
I haven't really. I think I tell them more now, like, you were always so independent, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I see it more that way. I remember once taking Nora to the pediatrician, who obviously was both of their pediatricians. Mac would go in and the doctor would say, we have to have a shot today. And Mac would start rolling his sleeve up. That's just who he was. And Nora once turned to the doctor and said, no, we're not going to do that today. And she was probably 3 years old. And she just went, that's not going to happen today. And she said it like that. And the doctor turned to me. He was laughing so hard. And he said, I'm afraid of her. He goes, I have never been so tempted to not give a kid a shot because of her power. And he's the one, and his name was Dr. Glassman at Pediatric Associates. He was amazing. But he's the one who kind of turned it around for me a little bit. He said, this is exactly the way it should be. You have a son who is so gentle and so kind and so empathetic, and you have a daughter who is tough and has her own ideas about how things should be and is okay saying the word no. And he goes, trust me, it's hard now, but you are going to send them into the world. And when your daughter is a teenager and she says the word no with confidence, you're going to be glad. When she's going on dates with people and they're, you know what I mean, not respecting her boundaries or whatever, that's what you want. And he said, we need more gentle men in the world.
Aww.
And we need more women who aren't afraid to speak their mind.
What a legend.
Yeah. And I think that's when it all kind of turned around where I went, wait a minute, you're right. So,
wow. Yeah. That's really powerful.
Yeah.
And what was it like for them? So at this point, 1999, SpongeBob comes out.
Mm-hmm.
You're both on it that first season? Or did I feel like
Karen came on maybe at the end of the first season? I think she was on the first season.
And for your kids, like you have kids at that point that are how old?
He was born in 97. So, he's young.
He's too young to know what's going on yet.
But the show really picked up steam. It rolled up slowly. It wasn't like an instant hit. I feel like it took like the end of the first season, it started to get more popular. And then it really, really, really got crazy popular. And continued to get more popular. When Mac started elementary school, it was like the jam. Every kid was SpongeBob for Halloween. It was crazy, crazy, crazy.
And for them, there's obviously an anonymity to doing voiceover work in this way. Did like their classmates know?
Yes.
And was that hard for them? Was that
Yes.
cool for them? It was hard
They
for
didn't.
them.
I don't think either one of my kids ever loved it. I remember Mac telling me there was a big kid who was like in 5th grade who was following him around a lot at school, and he's really afraid. And of course, I'm like, what? Oh, I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick you up, and I'm going to find this kid. I'm going to crack some skulls of a fifth grader. So I was there, and I see them come out, and I see this kid, and I'm like, motherfucker.
Right.
So I kind of walked right up to this kid. I'm like, can I help you? Get in his, poor little kid's face. And he said, I'm sorry. I said, you're following my son around. And he said, is it true that his dad is SpongeBob? I've just been hoping that his dad was going to pick him up from school and I could meet him. And my heart melted. Like I thought,
sweet.
and here's this big lumbering kid. He happened to be like one of those kids like twice the size of the normal 5th grader. So you automatically assume he's a bully, profiling, which is sad for that kid. And then I was like, oh, okay, Mac, this kid's, harmless and,
But poor Mac's been terrorized.
Right. But my kids never told people, really. They never went out of their way to say, my dad is SpongeBob. Never.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're protective of Tom. Like, not that Tom ever complained about it, but I think our kids were always a little protective. That's my dad. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't want to share him.
He's my dad. He's not a character. He's my dad.
Yeah.
So, they didn't hate it, but they didn't necessarily love it or go out of their way to talk about it,
And one of the things, and one of the reasons why I did really want to talk to you specifically, is I feel like you have curated an existence for childhood that's magical. Like, it's pure Americana. It's like, it's the baking the pie for the 4th of July parade and being really fucking pissed when she doesn't get first. Right? She's been shafted so many years.
Pissed. Her Chicago comes out.
But your kids have the same friends that they've had since they were like little, and you kind of cultivated this closeness and this intimacy in a city where it's kind of hard to do that, especially for kids who have some relation to the industry in some way.
Yeah.
Was that like a conscious choice? Because
sure.
I feel like you were constantly making, and now that your kids are older, you are still making moments for other people's kids.
Yeah, So Tom and I both, because he grew up in Syracuse in this middle-class neighborhood. I grew up in Chicago. We were able to go to the store, play outside, do all that kind of stuff. Well, I think a lot of people our age did. But that was really important to me. And when we started looking for a house in L.A., I was like, I have to have sidewalks. I have to have streetlights. I have to be able to walk to stuff. I'm a city person at heart. I cannot live up in the hill.
Those were all of my requirements.
Yeah, I'm like, I must be able to. We literally had a list. I probably saved it, but we had a list of what we want in a house. And the number one thing was, sorry, kids, your education comes later. The number one thing was must be able to walk to get coffee.
That was mine.
So
Jill,
selfish.
that
It wasn't
was
even
mine.
best school. It wasn't even like a good
Mine
school
was
district.
sidewalks and
That
coffee
was like
shops.
down, like
Yeah.
good school district is down a little lower. It was like must be able to get coffee. Let's get our priorities straight. I wanted to be able to walk to stuff. I wanted to be able my kids to have a decent public school. I was kind of like that. I knew if I had those ingredients and a public park nearby, like I knew if we had that, the other stuff would come. It would be a neighborhood. And I drove around here and I saw kids outside playing. And I just said, yeah, this is the one. And so we got really lucky that we were able to get this house that was kind of, needed love, needed some work, and move in there. And we moved in around the same time. A couple of other families moved in with their kids who were, same age as Mac. And so that first 4th of July parade where Mac is like on the tricycle and he's meeting this kid and he's meeting, my name's Daniel, my name's Jonah, and I live in this house. And Mac's like, I live in that house. And next thing you know, they're best friends and they're, in their 20s hanging out together. So Mac especially grew up with all these kids in the neighborhood his age. They walked to our local elementary school. They walked to the local middle school together every day and formed these relationships. They all went to different colleges and they're all still friends. Because they had that really solid, childhood of walking over to each other's house.
But also, like, up until your daughter went to college, you were super involved in their school lives,
I was
too.
very involved. I'm still kind of. I was very, very involved in the school. I volunteered. And then...
How are you doing that with work, though?
My mom couldn't volunteer.
Right.
And I think that maybe Not that I was jealous. I don't even know if I noticed parents volunteering. I don't know how many parents volunteered when I was young. Probably not many, because I don't remember seeing parents at school ever.
Yeah.
Back then. But I guess now as there's less teachers
There's
and
less
teachers
money for
aides or whatever,
public
that we
education,
need
yeah.
parents to help. And so, and I enjoy it. So I did it up at elementary school, and then I did it at middle school. And then when Nora got into drama in high school, I became a drama mama and helped out with that, and I really loved it. I helped so much that after she graduated, I went back and continued to help because they didn't have enough volunteers. And yeah.
But how did you, is just work flexible enough that you were always able to kind of move things around?
Yeah, and sometimes I would say to my agent, listen, it's the week of the show. I'm going to be at the school selling cupcakes. It's important. I think I also saw, like, when Nora went to high school and she got involved in drama, and I saw the impact that kind of stuff has on these kids, like the arts especially. Like, you see kids from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all economic, places, academic places come together. And art is like the equalizer, the great equalizer, because you can be a terrible student and an amazing singer and actor. You could be a brainiac and, struggle with dance steps that you wish you could do or whatever. But somehow when they come together in art, and artists are generally nicer to people, I feel like. That's been my experience. It's so positive. It was such a positive thing. I wanted to, help it along.
Okay, now this is going to be my last question, and I think it's something that my friends and I, because we're earlier on in this journey, think about, maybe obsess about a lot, is now that you are entering and have entered, you're an empty nester now, you're in this new chapter of parenting your kids. How do you think about maintaining your closeness with them and, still... Do you feel like they know that if they have a hard problem, you're the person to come to talk? You had a shitty day in your 20s and you were going home for mom to make you lunch. How do you kind of maintain that with your own kids so they know that they're not going to be judged and that you're the safe person to come to?
Well, both of my kids currently are in amazing relationships. Our son started dating a girl senior year of high school that we adore and he adores and she adores him, and it couldn't be better. And our daughter started dating someone in college who she adores and he adores her and we adore him and his parents adore her. I mean, it's just, we're really lucky that way. So maybe if they had a problem, they would go to that person.
Sure.
But I think... Well, our son lives near us in the neighborhood, and one thing I do is I occasionally try to make some food that he would like. If I haven't heard from him for a few days, it's like, can I drop off some of my homemade chili that's delicious, or a pie? And then I'll be like, sure. They're busy. These kids are busy, man. I feel like they work harder than we did when we were that age. Their job hours are longer.
Yeah.
People who work from home, I feel like it's never off. You're never off. I think I got off track.
No, it's just about how you stay in touch. And
we
how
definitely
you
have
connection.
our holiday traditions. That's really important to me. And birthdays are really important to me. And we just try to get together. Our daughter's at school in Chicago. When she comes home, it's like your sister's home. We're going to do a big dinner. We're going to do so we do a lot of that. And I love throw a big Halloween party.
She sure does.
I love throwing parties.
Hottest invite in town.
I love throwing parties. I love having people over. I am my mother in that way. I'm a very the more the merrier kind of person. Tom likes it once it's happening. I think the idea of it stresses him out. I think it's like,
my guy's exactly
we're
the
doing
same.
What? We're having how many people over? What? But then he's having more fun than me in the event. You know what I mean? He loves it.
100%. Jill, I could talk to you literally all day. I feel like in so many respects, you are my North Star.
Aww.
Creating moments, making it your house a place where people want to come over and spend time. I need to get better at making pies if I'm going to try and keep up. But it is such a joy, and I feel so lucky that I get to raise my kids near you because they are learning, especially the older one, what it is to be neighborly, because randomly, like the little fairy that is Jill will just be like, hey, do you want to see this cool book? So I hope that when I enter my next chapter of parenting, there's another young family that moves in that I can be the Jill for them.
Oh, I think of your son as going to be like my practice grandchild. Like, can I maybe practice on him?
You can have him literally anytime.
No, I see you coming in and out of the house with the groceries and the car seat and all that. And I go, it was yesterday. I mean, I will say that, like, my one thing, people say, oh, it goes by so quickly. But it really does. And the thing that goes by most of all for me that's sad, the thing I miss the most, is not any particular age group, but the feeling. Like when I drive by park and I see all those people playing with their kids, I remember that time stands still when you're sometimes at places like that, like parks, where you just kind of watch your kid play and you're just like, oh, we got to get home, we got to make dinner. And there's an ease to it. Yeah. Because when they're really young, because then it becomes schedule, and they have a schedule that's even worse than yours. Soccer and practice and play dates and birthday parties, and oh my gosh, it's like your whole world becomes a schedule. There's a little period before that happens, a sweet spot, that's the thing that I go, oh man, remember those days. Ugh. Have fun with all the birthday parties and the
we're already
the bounce
there,
season.
Unfortunately. Well, Jill, I love you. I can't wait.
Too.
I can't wait to continue conversations both on mic and off. Thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in next week for another chat in the closet. In the meantime, follow along on Instagram and subscribe to the Mother Life Substack. This podcast was produced by Mother Life, music by Ronan Langa. See you next time.